The year was 2157, and the universe had changed in ways that people from the old Earth could never have imagined. Humans had traveled to the stars and found they were not alone. The galaxy was full of life, full of different species who had their own worlds, their own cultures, their own ideas about how things should work. The Galactic Coalition was like a big club where all the different alien species got together to make decisions. Earth had joined this club about 50 years ago, and humans had quickly become very important members. Some aliens liked humans a lot, others did not trust them at all. Lisa Martinez sat in her big chair in the television studio looking at the THRS cameras that would soon be broadcasting her show to billions of viewers across 17 different star systems. She was the host of Galactic Perspectives, the most popular political talk show in known space. Every day, aliens from dozens of different worlds tuned in to hear what she had to say about politics, culture, and the way different species got along with each other. Lisa was proud of her show, but she was also angry about many things. She thought humans were too aggressive, too quick to fight, and too proud of themselves. She believed that other alien species were more advanced than humans, more peaceful, and better at solving problems without violence. She spent most of her time on television telling people that humans should step back and let the aliens take charge of important decisions. The studio around her was filled with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Cameras that could broadcast instantly to any world. Computers that could translate her words into thousands of different alien languages. And screens that showed her exactly how many people were watching from each planet. Today, like every day, the numbers were huge. Over 12 billion viewers would be watching her show. Lisa's producer, a nervous man named Carl Peterson, walked over to her desk with a tablet in his hands. "Lisa, the ratings from last week's show about human military expansion are incredible," he said, trying to sound excited. "The Centauri system loved it when you criticized the new human colonies. And the Vegan Federation has been sharing clips of your comments about human aggression all week." Lisa smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Good," she said. "Someone needs to tell the truth about what humans are really like. We're not the heroes that everyone thinks we are. We're bullies who use our military power to get what we want." What Lisa did not know was that her show was being watched very carefully by people who were not her friends. In a dark room on a ship somewhere in deep space, 3 tall, thin aliens with gray skin and large black eyes were watching her latest episode. They were Andromedans, members of a species that had been trying to reduce human influence in the galaxy for many years. "She is perfect," said the first Andromedan, whose name was difficult for humans to pronounce. "This human female spreads our message better than our own propaganda networks." "Yes," agreed the second Andromedan. "She makes other humans doubt themselves. She makes them ashamed of their own species." "This is exactly what we need." The third Andromedan was looking at financial reports on a glowing screen. "The payments to her network have been transferred. She does not know where the money comes from, but it keeps her show running and keeps her saying the things we want her to say." The Andromedans had been secretly giving money to several Earth television networks for almost 2 years. They used fake companies and complicated financial tricks to hide where the money was really coming from. Their goal was simple: make humans lose confidence in themselves and their government, so that when it came time for important trade negotiations, humans would be weak and easy to control. Lisa Martinez had no idea that she was being used, as she really believed everything she said on her show. She thought she was helping to make the galaxy a more peaceful place by criticizing human behavior and promoting alien cultures over human traditions. Meanwhile, on a transport ship traveling between the Titan mining stations and Earth, a man named Jake Harrison was reading reports about galactic politics on his personal tablet. Jake was different from most people. He had been a soldier, a diplomat, and a negotiator. He had saved alien worlds from disasters, helped resolve conflicts between different species, and earned the respect of beings from across the galaxy. Jake was tall and quiet, with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything around him. He moved like a man who was always ready for trouble, but he spoke like a teacher who wanted everyone to understand important things. Aliens often said that Jake Harrison was what they hoped all humans could be like. Most people called him Neo. Because of the way he could solve problems that seemed impossible, He had earned this nickname during the Centauri crisis 3 years ago, when he had single-handedly prevented a war between humans and the Centauri Republic by discovering that the conflict was being caused by a third party who wanted both sides to fight each other. Jake rarely appeared on television or gave interviews. He preferred to let his actions speak for themselves. But recently, he had been receiving reports from intelligence agencies about Andromeda activities that worried him greatly. The Andromedans were trying to manipulate human media, and they were having success. As Jake read through the latest intelligence reports, he saw Lisa Martinez's name mentioned several times. The reports showed that her network had been receiving large amounts of money from companies that were secretly controlled by Andromedan agents. The money was being used to promote anti-human content and to make humans doubt their own government and military. Jake put down his tablet and looked out the window of the transport ship at the stars rushing past. He had faced many enemies in his life, but he had never fought against people from his own species who were being used by alien manipulators. This was a new kind of challenge. It would require a new kind of solution. He picked up his communication device and sent a message. To his contact at Earth Intelligence Services, "I need detailed files on Lisa Martinez and her show," he wrote. "Also, I want to accept her invitation to appear on Galactic Perspectives. It's time for the galaxy to hear the truth about what's really happening." Jake knew that this would not be an easy battle. Lisa Martinez was popular. She was convinced that she was right. And she had the support of millions of viewers who believed what she told them. But Jake also knew that truth was more powerful than lies, and that humans deserved to know when they were being manipulated by their enemies. The transport ship continued its journey toward Earth, carrying with it a man who was about to change the course of galactic politics forever. Lisa Martinez walked into her office at the Global Broadcasting Network headquarters in New York City, feeling excited about her next big story. The morning news feeds were full of reports about the Andromedan trade alliance making public statements about human behavior in space. The Andromedans were calling humans primitive warmongers and saying that Earth's government was too violent to be trusted with important decisions in the galaxy. This was exactly the kind of story that Lisa loved. She had been saying the same things about humans for years, and now she had backing from one of the most respected alien civilizations in the galaxy. The Andromedans were known for being peaceful, intelligent, and advanced. If they were criticizing human behavior, then Lisa felt she had been right all along. Her assistant, a young woman named Kelly Brown, was waiting for her with a cup of coffee and a stack of research files. "Lisa, the Andromedan statements are getting huge coverage across all the networks," Kelly said, handing over the coffee. "Everyone wants to know how Earth's government is going to respond." Lisa sat down at her desk and started looking through the files. "This is perfect," she said. "I've been telling people for years that humans are too aggressive, and now the Andromedans are saying the same thing. We need to get someone important on the show to talk about this." Kelly pulled out her tablet and showed Lisa a list of possible guests. "I've contacted several government officials, but most of them don't want to appear on the show right now. They're probably afraid you'll ask them hard questions about human military actions." Lisa laughed. "Of course they're afraid. They know I won't let them get away with their usual excuses about protecting human interests." She looked through the list of names, but none of them seemed interesting enough for the kind of show she wanted to do. Then, Kelly mentioned a name that made Lisa stop reading. "There is one person who might be willing to come on the show," Kelly said carefully. "Jake Harrison." Lisa looked up from her papers. Everyone in the galaxy knew who Jake Harrison was. He was the man who had prevented the Centauri War, saved 3 alien worlds from natural disasters, and negotiated peace treaties between species that had been fighting for centuries. Aliens loved him almost as much as humans did, and his reputation for being calm and wise was known throughout the galaxy. "Neo Harrison," Lisa said, using his nickname. "He never does interviews. He's been invited on every major show in the galaxy, and he always says no." Kelly nodded. "That's what makes this so interesting. People contacted us yesterday. They said he would be willing to appear on Galactic Perspectives to discuss human-alien relations and the recent Andromedan statements." Lisa felt her heart beating faster. Getting Jake Harrison on her show would be the biggest interview of her career. But more than that, It would give her a chance to challenge the man who many people saw as the perfect example of human leadership. If she could show that even Jake Harrison could not defend human behavior in space, it would prove her point better than anything else she had ever done. "Set it up," Lisa said immediately. "I want him on the show as soon as possible." What Lisa did not know was that Jake Harrison had his own reasons for agreeing to appear on her show. On his transport ship, which had now arrived at Earth orbit, Jake was meeting with Agent Maria Santos from Earth Intelligence Services. Maria was a small woman with sharp eyes who had been tracking Andromedan activities for the past 2 years. "The evidence is clear," Maria said, showing Jake a series of financial documents on her tablet. "The Andromedans have been secretly funding at least 12 different media organizations on Earth. They're using fake companies and shell corporations to hide where the money is coming from." Jake looked at the documents carefully. The amounts of money were enormous, enough to keep several television networks running for years. "And Lisa Martinez's network is getting the most money," he said. "Yes," Maria confirmed. "Global Broadcasting Network has received over 50 million credits in the past 18 months. The money comes with no strings attached, officially, but the timing is suspicious. Every time GBN runs a story criticizing human government or military actions, they get another payment within a few days." Jake stood up and walked to the window of the meeting room, looking down at Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from space, but he knew that down on the surface, millions of people were watching television shows that were designed to make them ashamed of being human. "The Andromedans are smart," Jake said. "They're not using force or obvious propaganda. They're using our own people, our own media, to spread their message." Lisa Martinez really believes what she's saying. She thinks she's helping to make the galaxy more peaceful. Maria nodded. "That's what makes this so dangerous. She's not lying or acting. She genuinely believes that humans are too violent, and that alien species should be making decisions for us. The Andromedans have found the perfect spokesperson, someone who will say exactly what they want without knowing she's being manipulated." Jake turned back to Maria. "What do we know about the upcoming trade negotiations?" "The Andromedans want to control shipping routes through 3 major star systems," Maria explained. "If they get what they want, they'll have economic control over almost 30% of galactic trade. Earth's colonies would become dependent on Andromedan permission to trade with other worlds." Jake understood immediately. The Andromedans were not just trying to embarrass humans or hurt their feelings. They were trying to weaken human influence so they could take economic control of large parts of the galaxy. The propaganda campaign against human media was just the first step in a much larger plan. "So when I go on Lisa Martinez's show," Jake said slowly, "I won't just be defending human honor. I'll be fighting for human independence." Maria smiled for the first time during their meeting. "Exactly. The galaxy needs to know what the Andromedans are really doing, but it has to be done carefully. If you just make accusations without proof, it will look like paranoid conspiracy theories." Jake thought about this for a moment. He had been in difficult situations before, but this was different. He would be fighting an enemy who was hiding behind friendly faces and good intentions. He would have to expose lies without seeming like a bully, and he would have to do it on live television in front of billions of viewers. "I'll need complete copies of all the financial records," Jake said. "And I want communication intercepts. If you have them, when I go on that show, I want to have everything I need to show the galaxy exactly what's happening." Maria handed him a secure data chip. "Everything is on here." "Jake, this could get ugly. Lisa Martinez has a lot of supporters, and they're not going to like being told they've been fooled." Jake took the data chip and put it in his jacket pocket. "The truth is never easy," he said, "but it's always worth fighting for." 2 days later, Lisa Martinez received confirmation that Jake Harrison would appear on her show the following week. She spent the next several days preparing her questions, researching his background, and planning how she would challenge his views on human leadership. In the galaxy, she had no idea that she was about to become part of the biggest political scandal in galactic history. The studio lights were brighter than usual on the day of the most important interview in galactic broadcasting history. Lisa Martinez sat across from Jake Harrison in the main studio of Global Broadcasting Network, with cameras positioned to capture every word and expression for the 12 billion viewers watching across 17 star systems. Lisa had spent 3 days preparing for this moment. She had written down dozens of tough questions about human military actions, human colonization policies, and what she called human supremacist attitudes. She was confident that she could expose Jake Harrison as just another example of human arrogance. Even though most of the galaxy saw him as a hero, Jake sat quietly in his chair, wearing a simple dark suit that made him look more like a teacher than a legendary diplomat. His hands were folded in his lap, and his expression was calm and patient. He had arrived at the studio 30 minutes early and had spent the time reviewing the information that Agent Maria Santos had given him. The data chip in his jacket pocket contained enough evidence to change galactic politics forever. "Good evening, and welcome to Galactic Perspectives," Lisa began, looking directly into the main camera. "I'm your host, Lisa Martinez. Tonight we have a very special guest. Jake Harrison, known throughout the galaxy as Neo, is here to discuss recent statements by the Andromedan Trade Alliance about human behavior in space." She turned to Jake with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Jake, thank you for finally agreeing to appear on our show. You've been invited to dozens of interviews over the years, but you've always declined. What made you decide to speak publicly now?" Jake looked at her calmly. "Sometimes the truth needs to be heard, Lisa. When I see confusion and misunderstanding spreading across the galaxy, I think it's important for people to have all the facts." Lisa nodded, but she was already preparing her first attack. "Speaking of facts, let's talk about some recent events. The Andromedan Trade Alliance has publicly stated that humans are primitive warmongers who use violence to solve problems that could be resolved peacefully. How do you respond to these serious accusations?" I think the Andromedans are entitled to their opinion," Jake said quietly. "But I also think opinions should be based on complete information. What specific examples are they using to support their claims?" Lisa had expected Jake to get defensive immediately, but his calm response threw her off balance for a moment. She quickly recovered and pulled out her tablet. "Well, let's look at the facts. In the past 5 years, humans have established military bases in 3 different star systems. Human colonies have expanded into territories that were previously uninhabited, and human diplomatic missions often include armed security forces. Doesn't this prove that humans prefer force over peaceful negotiation?" Jake leaned forward slightly, his voice remaining steady and reasonable. "Lisa, let me tell you about those military bases you mentioned. The first one, in the Kepler system, was built at the request of the Kepler Colony Federation after they were attacked by pirates. Human forces helped drive off the attackers and stayed to protect civilian shipping routes." He paused, giving viewers time to process this information. "The second base, near Proxima Centauri, was established after a natural disaster destroyed the main spaceport on Proxima Prime. Human engineers rebuilt the port, and human security forces stayed to help maintain order while the local government recovered." Lisa interrupted him. "Surely you can't justify all human military actions by claiming they were helping other species." "I'm not justifying anything," Jake replied calmly. "I'm providing context that seems to be missing from the Andromedan statements. The third base you mentioned is in the Vega system, where human forces are working with vegan military units to protect trade routes from organized crime syndicates." Across the galaxy, alien viewers were paying close attention to Jake's words. Many of them remembered the events he was describing, and they remembered being grateful for human help during those difficult times. In the Kepler system, families of traders who had been attacked by pirates were watching the show and nodding in agreement with Jake's explanations. Lisa realized that her planned attack was not working as expected. She decided to try a different approach. "Even if some human military actions were justified, don't you think humans have become too dominant in galactic affairs? Shouldn't more advanced species like the Andromedans be taking leadership roles instead?" This was exactly the kind of question that Jake had been expecting. Looked directly at Lisa, and for the first time, something changed in his expression. His voice remained calm, but there was a new intensity in his eyes. "Lisa, what makes you think the Andromedans are more qualified to lead than humans? What evidence do you have that they would make better decisions for the galaxy?" Lisa felt confident. Again, this was a question she had been preparing to answer for months. The Andromedans have a longer history of space travel than humans. They've been part of galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. They have advanced technology, peaceful societies, and a record of avoiding violent conflicts. That's interesting, Jake said, still looking directly at her. Where did you get this information about Andromedan history and their peaceful nature? It's common knowledge, Lisa said, feeling slightly defensive. Any research into Andromedan culture will show that they're more evolved than humans when it comes to resolving conflicts. Jake nodded slowly. And where did you do this research? What sources did you use? Lisa began to feel uncomfortable. Jake's questions seemed simple, but there was something about the way he was asking them that made her nervous. I use standard academic sources, news reports, and cultural studies that are available to anyone. I see, Jake said. And did any of these sources mention the Andromedan invasion of the Sirius system 200 years ago? Or their attempt to blockade the Centauri Republic during the resource disputes 50 years ago? Lisa stared at him. She had never heard of these events, and she could not tell if Jake was making them up, or if she had somehow missed important historical information. I'm not familiar with those specific incidents, she admitted. Jake's expression remained patient, but viewers across the galaxy could sense that something important was happening. Lisa, if you're going to advocate for Andromedan leadership over human leadership, don't you think you should have complete information about Andromedan history? Lisa felt her confidence starting to slip. Of course, I believe in doing thorough research, but the important point is that the Andromedans are calling for less human aggression in space. Surely you can agree that reducing violence is a good goal. Absolutely, Jake agreed. Reducing violence is always a good goal. But I'm curious about something, Lisa. Your show has been very successful in recent years. Your network has been able to expand its operations, upgrade its equipment, and reach more viewers across the galaxy. Where's the funding for all this? Expansion coming from? Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Our funding comes from standard sources. Advertising revenue, subscription fees, and some private investment. Private investment, Jake repeated thoughtfully. That's interesting. Can you tell our viewers who these private investors are? For the first time since the interview began, Lisa found herself unable to answer immediately.
She knew that her
network received money from several investment companies, but she had never looked closely at who owned those companies or where their money came from. I don't have those details with me, she said, trying to sound confident. Jake nodded as if he had expected this answer. That's understandable. Financial arrangements can be complicated. Don't you think that viewers have a right to know who is funding the news and opinions they're receiving? Across the galaxy, billions of viewers were beginning to realize that this interview was not going the way anyone had expected. Lisa Martinez, who was known for asking tough questions and challenging her guests, was suddenly being challenged herself. And Jake Harrison, who had seemed like he would be an easy target, was asking questions that she could not answer. In the control room, Carl Peterson was watching the monitors with growing concern. The interview was supposed to be about human, military actions, and Andromedan criticism. Instead, it was becoming something completely different. Lisa Martinez could feel sweat forming on her forehead under the hot studio lights. The interview was not going at all like she had planned. Instead of exposing Jake Harrison as another example of human arrogance, she found herself struggling. To answer his simple questions about her own research and funding sources, she decided to go back to her original strategy and make stronger accusations against human behavior in space. If she could make Jake look bad enough, maybe the viewers would forget about the uncomfortable questions he had been asking her. Let's get back to the real issue here, Lisa said, trying to regain control of the conversation. Jake, humans have been expanding across the galaxy for 50 years now, taking resources, claiming territory, and imposing human culture on other species. Don't you think it's time for humans to step back and let more evolved species take the lead? Jake looked at her with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the interview. Lisa, which human colonies have imposed their culture on other species? Can you give me specific examples? Lisa felt frustrated. She had made similar statements hundreds of times on her show, and no one had ever asked her for specific examples before. It's a well-known pattern, she said.
Oh.
Human expansion always leads to cultural dominance, but you can't name any specific cases, Jake said gently. Lisa, I've visited most of the human colonies in the galaxy. On New Terra, humans live alongside 3 different alien species, and they share government responsibilities equally. On Mars Station 7, the colony is run by a council that includes humans, Centaurians, and vegan representatives. He paused, letting this information sink in with the billions of viewers who were watching. On Kepler Prime, the human settlers asked the native population for permission before establishing their colony, and they pay annual fees to the local government for the right to live there. Lisa realized that she was losing the argument, but she was too committed to her position to back down now. She decided to make her strongest accusation yet. Even if some individual colonies behave well, the fact remains that humans are fundamentally too violent for galactic leadership, she said, her voice rising slightly. Look at human history on Earth. Thousands of years of warfare, genocide, and oppression. Other species have evolved beyond such primitive behavior. That's a serious accusation, Jake said, his voice still calm but with a new edge of steel. You're saying that humans are inherently more violent than other species in the galaxy? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, Lisa replied, feeling confident again. Humans should step back from leadership roles and let more peaceful species guide galactic policy. Species like the Andromedans, who have learned to resolve conflicts without violence. Jake was quiet for a long moment, looking at Lisa with an expression that was hard to read. When he spoke again, his voice was very calm, but something about his tone made everyone in the studio pay attention. Lisa, I want to make sure I understand your position correctly. You believe that humans are too violent to be trusted with leadership roles in the galaxy. You believe that the Andromedans are more peaceful and should be making decisions for other species. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct, Lisa said. Not realizing that she was walking into a trap, Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small data pad. I'd like to share some information with you and our viewers. This morning, I received intelligence reports from multiple sources about Andromedan activities in our galaxy. Lisa felt her stomach start to twist with anxiety. What kind of activities? Jake looked down at his datapad, then back at Lisa. For the past 2 years, the Andromedan Trade Alliance has been secretly funding media organizations on Earth. They've been using fake companies and shell corporations to hide where the money is coming from. The color began to drain from Lisa's face. That's impossible. Where would you get such information? From Earth Intelligence Services? From Centaurian Security? And from intercepted Andromedan communications? Jake said calmly. Lisa, your network, Global Broadcasting Network, has received over 50 million credits from Andromedan sources in the past 18 months. Lisa stared at him in shock. That's not true. Our funding comes from legitimate investment companies. Jake touched his datapad and images appeared on the large screens around the studio. The images showed financial documents, bank transfers, and corporate registration papers. These are the companies that have been funding your network, Jake said. Galactic Media Investments, Universal Broadcasting Partners, and Stellar Communications. Fund. He touched the pad again, and new documents appeared. And these are the real ownership records for those companies. All 3 are secretly owned and controlled by the Andromedan Trade Alliance. Lisa looked at the documents on the screens, trying to process what she was seeing. The evidence was overwhelming and detailed. Company names, bank account numbers, transfer dates, and amounts were all clearly visible. This proves that your network has been receiving money from Andromedan sources without your knowledge, Jake continued. But the question is, why would the Andromedans want to secretly fund Earth media companies? Jake touched his datapad one more time, and a new document appeared on the screens. It was a communication intercept written in Andromedan symbols with a human translation below it. This is an internal Andromedan government communication from 3 months ago, Jake said, reading from the document. It says, the human media manipulation program continues to show excellent results. The Martinez broadcast has been particularly effective at making humans doubt their own government and military. Continue funding at current levels. Lisa felt like the floor was falling away beneath her. "This can't be real," she whispered, but Jake was not finished. He displayed another intercepted communication. "This one is from 6 weeks ago. It says the human female Martinez is a perfect asset. She genuinely believes the anti-human messages she spreads, which makes her much more convincing than our own propaganda agents. She has no idea she is working for us." The studio was completely silent except for the humming of the cameras and broadcasting equipment. Across the galaxy, 12 billion viewers were watching Lisa Martinez realize that she had been completely manipulated by the very aliens she had been defending. Jake's voice remained steady and calm. "Lisa, the Andromedans have been using you and your network to spread anti-human propaganda. They want to weaken human influence in the galaxy so they can take control of major trade routes during the upcoming negotiations." Lisa looked at the evidence on the screens around her, then back at Jake. "But I really believe what I've been saying about human behavior. I wasn't lying or acting." "I know," Jake said gently. "That's what made you so valuable to them. You genuinely believed their propaganda. So when you repeated it, other people believed it too." He leaned forward slightly. "But Lisa, don't you think you should have checked your sources more carefully? Don't you think you should have researched Andromedan history before advocating for their leadership? Don't you think you should have known where your network's funding was coming from?" Lisa could not answer. She was beginning to understand the full scope of how she had been used, and the realization was devastating. Jake displayed one more document. "On the screens, it's the most important communication of all," he said. "It's from last week, discussing the upcoming trade negotiations. The document showed Andromedan plans to take control of shipping routes through 3 major star systems, which would give them economic power over 30% of galactic trade. The plan specifically mentioned using compromised human media assets to weaken Earth's negotiating position. Andromedans don't see you as a colleague or an ally, Lisa," Jake said quietly. "They see you as a useful tool. And when they're finished with you, they'll throw you away." Lisa Martinez sat in her chair, staring at the evidence of her own manipulation, while billions of viewers across the galaxy watched her world fall apart. Lisa Martinez sat frozen in her chair, staring at the documents displayed on the screens around the studio. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and completely devastating. Her hands were shaking as she tried to process the reality that her entire career had been built on lies fed to her by alien manipulators. But Lisa was not ready to give up. She had spent years building her reputation as a fearless journalist who asked tough questions and challenged powerful people. She could not accept that she had been nothing more than a puppet for Andromedan propaganda. "This is all fake," she said suddenly, her voice loud and desperate. "Jake, you're obviously working for human intelligence agencies. You've created these fake documents to discredit me because I've been telling the truth about human aggression." Jake looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Lisa, these documents have been verified by intelligence services from 6 different species. The Centaurian Republic confirmed the bank transfers. The Vegan Federation provided additional communication intercepts. Even the Kepler Colony Federation has evidence of Andromeda manipulation attempts in their territory." Lisa shook her head violently. "I don't believe you. The Andromedans are a peaceful species. They wouldn't do something like this." Jake touched his datapad again, and a new image appeared on the screens. It was a recording of an Andromedan government meeting with subtitles in multiple languages scrolling below the alien speakers. "This recording was made 3 days ago," Jake said. "It's a meeting of the Andromedan Trade Council discussing their manipulation campaign," the recording showed. 3 tall, gray-skinned Andromedans sitting around a glowing table. Their voices were translated into human language by the subtitle system. "The human media assets continue to be useful," the first Andromedan was saying. "The Martinez female has convinced millions of humans that their own species is inferior." 2 hours. The second Andromeda made a sound that the translation system labeled as laughter. "It is remarkable how easy it was to manipulate her. She actually believes she is fighting for peace and justice." "Yes," agreed the third Andromedan. "She has no idea that she is helping us prepare for economic conquest. When the trade negotiations begin next month, Earth's government will be so weakened by internal doubt that they will accept whatever terms we offer. Lisa watched the recording with growing horror. These were not the wise, peaceful aliens she had been defending for years. These were calculating manipulators who saw humans as nothing more than tools to be used and discarded. But the worst was yet to come. The first Andromedan in the recording began speaking again. "What should we do with the Martinez female after the negotiations are complete?" he asked. "Dispose of her." The second Andromedan replied casually. "Once we control the trade routes, we will no longer need human media assets. We can shut down their funding and let them fail on their own." The third Andromedan made the laughing sound again. "It will be amusing to watch her try to figure out what happened. These humans are so primitive that they probably think we actually care about their opinions." The recording ended, and the studio fell into complete silence. Lisa's face had gone, completely white, and her hands were gripping the arms of her chair, so tightly that her knuckles were turning pale. Jake's voice was very quiet when he spoke. "Lisa, this is what the Andromedans really think of you. You're not their ally or their spokesperson. You're what they call a useful idiot, someone who helps their enemies without understanding what they're doing." Lisa tried to speak, but no words came out. She had dedicated years of her life to promoting Andromedan culture and criticizing human behavior. She had genuinely believed she was making the galaxy a more peaceful place. Now she was learning that every word she had spoken, every argument she had made, had been part of a plan to destroy human independence. Jake was not finished. He displayed another document on the screens. "This is a list of other media personalities who have been receiving Andromedan funding. Some of them know they're working for alien interests. Others, like you, have no idea they're being used." List contained dozens of names from news networks across Earth and the human colonies. Some were famous television hosts, others were popular writers and commentators. All of them had been saying similar things about human behavior, that humans were too aggressive, too primitive, too dangerous to be trusted with leadership roles in the galaxy. "The Andromedans have been running the most successful propaganda campaign in galactic history," Jake continued. "They've convinced millions of humans to doubt their own government, their own military, and their own culture. And they've done it by using humans to spread the message." Lisa finally found her voice, but it was weak and shaky. "I really believed I was helping to promote peace," she whispered. "I know you did," Jake said gently. "That's what makes this so cruel. The Andromedans took your genuine desire to make the galaxy better and turned it into a weapon against your own species." He leaned forward in his chair, looking directly at Lisa. "Now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Lisa looked around the studio at the cameras that were broadcasting her humiliation to 12 billion viewers across the galaxy. She thought about all the interviews she had given, all the articles she had written, all the speeches she had made, criticizing human behavior and promoting alien leadership. "I've been such a fool," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. Jake's expression softened slightly. "Lisa, being fooled by a sophisticated manipulation campaign doesn't make you a fool. It makes you a victim. But victims can choose to fight back." He stood up from his chair and walked over to her. "You have a choice to make right now, in front of the entire galaxy. You can keep defending the Andromedans and pretend this evidence isn't real, or you can admit that you've been manipulated and help expose the truth." Lisa looked up at him, then at the cameras, then at the evidence still displayed on the screens around the studio. She thought about the Andromedan officials laughing about how easy she had been to manipulate. She thought about their plan to dispose of her once they no longer needed her. Slowly, Lisa turned to face the main camera. Her voice was shaky, but she spoke clearly enough for every viewer in the galaxy to hear. "I've been wrong," she said. "I've been completely, terribly wrong. I thought I was promoting peace and understanding, but I was actually helping a foreign power manipulate my own species." She took a deep breath. The Andromedans had been using me, using my show, and using my network to spread propaganda designed to weaken human confidence and human unity. I didn't know it was happening, but that's no excuse. I should have checked my sources. I should have verified my information. I should have known where my funding was coming from. Jake sat back down, watching as Lisa continued her confession. "To the galaxy. I owe an apology to every human who trusted my reporting," Lisa said, tears now flowing freely down her face. "I owe an apology to our government, our military, and our colonies. Most of all, I owe an apology to the truth. The interview had become something that no one had expected, not a debate about human behavior, but a live confession of the biggest media manipulation scandal in galactic history. The silence in the studio lasted for almost 30 seconds after Lisa Martinez finished her confession. Across the galaxy, 12 billion viewers sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The most popular political talk show host in known space had just admitted that she had been unknowingly working for alien manipulators for years. Jake Harrison remained calm and composed, even though he knew that this moment would change galactic politics forever. He looked at Lisa, who was still crying quietly in her chair, then turned to face the main camera. "What you have seen tonight is bigger than one person or one television show," Jake said, his voice carrying the authority that had made him famous. "Across the galaxy. This is about the right of every species to make their own decisions, without being manipulated by hidden enemies." He gestured toward the evidence still displayed on the screens around the studio. The Andromedan Trade Alliance has spent years and millions of credits trying to convince humans that they are not worthy of self-governance. They have used our own media, our own people, and our own desire for peace against us. Jake paused, letting his words sink in with viewers on hundreds of different worlds. But tonight, the truth has been revealed. The galaxy now knows that the Andromedans are not the peaceful, wise leaders they pretend to be. They are manipulators who see other species as tools to be used for their own benefit. Within hours of the broadcast ending, the effects began to spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. On Earth, the Global Broadcasting Network's board of directors held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to fire Lisa Martinez. The network's stock price collapsed as investors realized that the company had been unknowingly funded by hostile aliens, but Lisa's firing was just the beginning. The evidence that Jake had presented led to investigations of dozens of other media, personalities, and organizations. By the end of the week, 17 different television hosts, 23 newspaper columnists, and 41 online content creators had been exposed as recipients of Andromedan funding. Most of them, like Lisa, had no idea they were being manipulated. They had genuinely believed they were promoting peace and understanding. When they learned the truth, many of them publicly apologized and resigned from their positions. A few tried to deny the evidence, but their credibility was destroyed when additional financial records were released. The scandal reached far beyond Earth's media. Intelligence agencies from multiple species began sharing information about Andromedan manipulation attempts in their own territories. The Centaurian Republic revealed that Andromedan agents had tried to bribe several of their senators. The Vegan Federation discovered that some of their cultural exchange programs had been secretly funded by Andromedan sources. Most importantly, the upcoming trade negotiations were completely transformed. The Andromedan delegation arrived on the neutral station expecting to negotiate from a position of strength, believing that human unity had been weakened by years of media manipulation. Instead, they found themselves facing a united front of multiple species who now knew about their deception. The lead Andromedan negotiator, a tall alien named Zeph Varnine, tried to deny all the evidence. "These accusations are based on fabricated documents," he told the assembled delegates from dozens of worlds. "Humans are trying to discredit us because they fear our peaceful influence." But it was too late. The evidence was too strong, and too many species had been affected by Andromedan manipulation. The trade negotiations collapsed within 2 days, and the Andromedan Trade Alliance found itself isolated and discredited. Jake Harrison became even more of a legend after the interview. Beings from across the galaxy praised his careful, methodical approach to exposing the truth. He had not shouted or made wild accusations. He had simply presented facts and let the evidence speak for itself. Many alien species began adopting what they called Harrison-style journalism, careful investigation, multiple sources, and complete transparency about funding and motivations. The interview also led to new laws and regulations about media transparency. The Galactic Coalition passed the Truth in Broadcasting Act, which required all news organizations to publicly disclose their funding sources. Several worlds established independent agencies to monitor foreign influence in their media systems. Lisa Martinez disappeared from public life completely. Some reporters tried to find her for follow-up interviews, but she had left Earth and was living quietly on a small agricultural colony in the outer systems. Friends who spoke to her said that she was working as a teacher at a local school, helping children learn basic reading and mathematics. She never gave another interview. But she did write one final statement that was published in several newspapers across the galaxy. In it, she took full responsibility for her role in spreading Andromedan propaganda, even though she had been manipulated. "I was so convinced that I was right," she wrote, "that I never bothered to check if I was being told the truth. I wanted to believe that humans were the problem and that aliens had all the answers, so I ignored evidence that didn't fit my beliefs. Every journalist, every person who speaks publicly should learn from my mistakes. Question everything, verify all sources, and never assume that your own good intentions will protect you from being used by others." The Andromedan Trade Alliance never recovered from the scandal. Their influence in galactic politics decreased dramatically, and several of their member worlds left the alliance to join other organizations. The alliance eventually dissolved completely, with individual Andromedan worlds establishing their own diplomatic relationships with other species. 3. Years after the interview, humanity's position in the Galactic Coalition was stronger than it had ever been. Not because humans had conquered anyone or forced other species to accept their leadership, but because they had proven that they valued truth, transparency, and the right of all species to make their own decisions. Jake Harrison continued his work as a diplomat and negotiator, but he also began teaching courses on media literacy and critical thinking at universities across the galaxy. His most famous lesson was simple: the truth is not always comfortable, and it is not always what we want to hear. But it is always worth defending. The interview between Jake Harrison and Lisa Martinez became required viewing in journalism schools throughout the galaxy. Students studied it not just as an example of how to expose corruption, but as a reminder of how easy it is for good people to be manipulated by those who understand their desires and weaknesses. Years later, when historians wrote about the period, they called it the Great Awakening, the moment when the galaxy learned to question the motives of those who claimed to have all the answers. It was a time when truth became more important than comfort, and when the courage to ask difficult questions was recognized as one of humanity's greatest gifts to galactic civilization. Jake Harrison had won more than a debate with a television host. He had helped the galaxy learn to think for itself.